What's going on? You there? Hey, Mom. What's up? Alright, now we're going to be talking about what the events that happened. No, we're not talking about that one. We're talking about how George Washington's belief shaped his career. But although many people think that George Washington was a revolutionary, he was actually an extreme conservative, and many of his beliefs were rooted in conservatism. Right? Right. So, George Washington believed in the aristocratic views. He believed in the 7 virtues, and he believed that his life was always going to be postered by other people and watched and written on and spoken of and watched through YouTube videos, and he knew this. So, point 1, we're getting into it. Point 1, George Washington was had very good aristocratic views. An aristocrat is someone who takes care of their land, always expanding, helps the people who are expanding their land. I thought I'd pause for a second. Help the people who expand their land, is an excellent horseback rider and war person. George Washington was all of these, especially the war person and horseback rider. George Washington even partially started the French and Indian War, believe it or not. And as Thomas Jefferson said, quote, he was the greatest horseback rider of his time, end quote. And this was extremely important because he showed that was an extremely important time back then. It was equivalent to being the greatest driver of all time. I mean, think about it. There weren't cars back then, but there were horses. Woo! So, point number 2 on the next one. Here we go. George Washington believed in 7 virtues. 7 virtues are faith, hope, love, self-control, justice, courage, wisdom, too. I learned that from you, Mr. Wheatley. Thank you so much. And George Washington believed that coming as close as you can to God was pretty much the pinnacle of humanity. And he believed that the 7 virtues were a huge portion in that. So, since he believed in those, he also tried to, like he found in his biographies, he tried to not show any emotion whatsoever. Even after winning the war, George Washington said, quote, a day like any other, weather was fair, end quote. After winning a war. Okay, on to the next one. Point number traces. George Washington believed that his life is always going to be postured by other people. Now, posturing is when someone realizes that you're pretty famous or not, and they just write biographies of your life. Oh, you don't like that view? Alright, I'll give you another one. Woo! What's up? And they write biographies, make YouTube videos, write books, etc. Speak about you as well. That podcast life, anyways. Like I was saying, he knew that this was gonna happen to him. So he always treated others like he would want to be treated, or anyone else in the future. Also, like he said, he never showed his emotion, which was made it hard for people nowadays to figure out what he was actually like, since he never showed any emotion. Also, he was always very hospitable to all of his people. He would, get this, treat anyone that came to his house. I'm trying to vlog here, computer. Anyways, he would always treat and then just say anyone that came to his house. Also, this was extremely important because he ended up dying from this. He was on a ladder fixing something in the beginning of like where you walk into the town he lived in. What a good man that man was. And it was a very cold day, very rainy as well. He came back to his house to dry off, and there were people waiting to be entertained. So instead of drying off, he entertained them, and he ended up catching a nasty, nasty cold. And since the medical wasn't that good back then, the doctors drained 80 ounces of blood from his body and put a bunch of green bugs on him. Green bugs. And this wasn't good at whatsoever. He ended up dying at the pinnacle of all this. George Washington said, quote, I am going, let me go. And he died. He died like a champ. Unfortunately, he did, though. This was not a good way to go out. But anyways, that's the end of George Washington. Rest in peace, dude. So, although many people tend to think of George Washington as a revolutionary, he was actually conservative, and George Washington believed in the aristocratic views, in the 7 virtues, and that life is always going to be possible by other people. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, peace!